She invited him to sit in a crowded cafe, unaware he was a lonely millionaire who'd change her life. The late afternoon sun glinted through the large windows of Sip and Savor, a trendy cafe tucked into the busy heart of Portwell City. Inside, the aroma of espresso mingled with soft jazz and lively chatter. Maya Bennett, 27 years old, sat alone by the window, cradling a steaming cappuccino. Her deep brown skin glowed in the golden light, and her oversized beige cardigan hung loosely over a floral summer dress. Maya was a graphic designer on break between meetings, her curly black hair pulled into a loose bun, tired but observant. As the cafe filled up, a tall man stood awkwardly by the entrance. Dressed in a sleek navy suit, early 40s, clean-shaven with sharp hazel eyes and light olive skin, he looked more like he belonged in a boardroom than a cafe line. His name was Julian Cross, though Maya didn't know that yet. Noticing the lack of empty seats, Maya smiled and lifted her hand. "You can sit here if you'd like," she offered. Julian hesitated, then nodded, giving a small appreciative smile. "Thank you, much appreciated." Julian sat across from Maya, his movements deliberate, cautious. He adjusted his sleeves, glancing around more than he made eye contact. Maya noticed. "So, rough day at the office?" she asked lightly, trying to break the ice. Julian chuckled quietly. "You could say that." He paused. "I'm Julian." "Maya," she extended a hand. He shook it, firm but not overbearing. They spoke little after that, each sipping their drinks in companionable silence. Maya pulled out her sketchbook. Julian pulled out his phone. Their worlds remained politely separate, until a sudden sob cut through the cafe noise. By the entrance, a little girl sat alone at a corner table. She wore a pastel pink dress, lace socks, shiny shoes, and a white bow in her soft blonde curls. Her cheeks were wet and her small hands clutched a tiny purse. Maya's eyes widened. "That dress. She's dressed for something special." Julian followed her gaze, his expression shifting. The CEO's guarded demeanor cracked. He saw more than just a crying child, he saw himself. Maya stood first. "I can't just sit here," she murmured. Julian followed instinctively, rising with her. They approached the girl gently. Maya crouched beside her, voice soft. "Hey sweetheart, are you okay?" The girl looked up, eyes glassy and lips trembling. "I'm waiting for my daddy. He said he'd come for the dance." Julian's breath caught. "What dance?" She held up a crumpled invitation card. "Father-daughter dance at the community center. He said he had work, but he'd try. He said," her voice cracked again. Maya looked at Julian. "Maybe we should call someone." Julian knelt down slowly, his suit creasing. "What's your name, Alice?" she whispered. "I'm Julian. This is Maya. Is your dad's number on the card?" Alice nodded. Julian took the card and dialed, straight to voicemail, twice. Maya gave him a worried look. Julian stood again, looking down at Alice with something that resembled guilt. "We can't leave her here." Julian's mind whirled as he stared at the child. A dance, a promise broken. It brought back echoes of his own past, his daughter, his mistakes. His jaw tightened. "I'll take her," Julian said suddenly. Maya blinked. "Take her to the dance. She's dressed and ready. She shouldn't have to miss it just because someone else didn't show up." Maya hesitated. "Are you sure? I mean, I'll take responsibility," Julian said firmly. He pulled out his phone again. "I'll inform the center. Let them know. Maybe they'll help us confirm her guardian." Maya looked at him, the stranger who'd barely spoken 5 sentences. Yet in his eyes now, she saw sincerity, a spark of something she couldn't name. "I'll come with you," she said. "We can't send her alone." "Let's both go." Julian gave her a surprised glance, then nodded. Alice wiped her eyes. "You'll come, for real?" Julian offered his hand. "For real." With Alice holding both their hands, they exited the cafe and hailed a cab. Maya rode in the back with Alice, gently fixing the girl's bow and dress as she smiled through fading tears. Julian sat silently in the front, calling the community center, introducing himself, verifying Alice's name. Everything checked out. The receptionist even remembered Alice's father registering her 2 weeks prior. Julian's voice softened over the phone. "We'll be there in 30 minutes. He turned to Maya. "We'll need to make a quick stop." "I can't show up like this." Maya raised an eyebrow, teasing. "You look pretty good in that suit." Julian allowed himself a small laugh. "Let's just say I can do better." They pulled up at an upscale boutique. Julian dashed inside. Maya and Alice waited in the car, whispering and giggling. Minutes later, he returned, now dressed in a black tuxedo, pocket square sharp, shoes polished. Alice gasped, "You look like a prince." Julian smiled genuinely. "Shall we go, princess?" The community center was modest but festively decorated. Streamers hung from the ceiling and soft music echoed through the large multipurpose room. Tables lined the walls with juice boxes and cookies. A handmade banner read, "Father-daughter dance, a night to remember." As they stepped inside, heads turned. Alice clutched both Maya and Julian's hands. For a moment she hesitated, nerves bubbling back to the surface. Julian leaned down. "You okay?" he whispered. Alice nodded. I just thought Daddy would come. Maya crouched next to her. Sometimes people let us down, but tonight you're not alone. Julian offered his hand again, this time with more purpose. Let's dance. Alice's face lit up as she walked with him toward the dance floor. Maya stood back watching the two sway awkwardly but adorably to the music. It was strange. Just hours ago she'd never met either of them. Now she felt part of something strangely meaningful. One of the staff members approached Maya and said, "She's lucky someone showed up. We've had other girls wait all night before." Maya's heart squeezed. Tonight was different. Julian moved carefully, unsure of how to guide a 6-year-old on a dance floor, but Alice didn't care. She giggled with every turn, her earlier sadness dissolving with each step. Her white shoes scuffed lightly against the floor as she twirled. Other fathers and daughters danced nearby, but many watched Julian and Alice with soft smiles. Something about the pair, the well-dressed stranger and the glowing child, radiated something rare, grace born from kindness. Maya stood by the refreshment table sipping punch and watching with a bittersweet smile. The moment was beautiful but also quietly heartbreaking. She couldn't stop thinking about how many times Alice might have waited like this before. Julian caught her gaze and gave a subtle nod. He was still dancing with Alice, but there was something else in his eyes now, gratitude perhaps, or an unspoken understanding. When the song ended, Alice ran back to Maya and threw her arms around her. "Thank you for coming, both of you." Maya hugged her tightly. "We wouldn't miss it." Julian watched, strangely moved. He hadn't expected the evening to hit so deeply, but something in him had shifted. As the night wound down, Julian stepped outside to take a call. Maya stayed inside with Alice, now munching on cookies and chatting with other kids. The room had warmed into laughter and stories. Outside, Julian leaned against a post and answered a business call. The board meeting had been delayed, and his assistant asked if he'd make it to tomorrow's summit. He gave a clipped yes, but his mind was elsewhere. When he hung up, he didn't go back inside right away. He looked up at the stars, wondering how one moment in a cafe had brought him here. Julian Cross, the man who prided himself on schedules, control, and never getting involved, was now the unexpected father figure at a dance. Maya eventually stepped outside and joined him. They stood in silence for a moment. "You okay?" she asked. Julian exhaled. "Yeah, just hadn't danced like that in a while." Maya chuckled. "You did great. She deserved it. Every kid does." They locked eyes, and for a moment words weren't needed. Something had begun to build between them. Not romance, not yet, but a foundation, trust, recognition. The event concluded. Parents slowly filtered out with their daughters, balloons in hand. Alice stood between Maya and Julian, holding tightly to both their hands. "Do I have to go home alone now?" she asked quietly. Julian hesitated. "We'll make sure you get home safe." The center's director confirmed Alice's father had still not shown up and hadn't answered follow-ups. Maya felt a surge of protective worry. "I can stay with her until someone comes," she offered. Julian looked down at Alice. "Do you want to come with us? Maybe grab a late-night ice cream?" Alice beamed. "Yes," with signed approval from the center and their contact details taken, the three left together. At the ice cream shop, Julian watched Alice laugh again, and it occurred to him. This wasn't just a good deed, this was a turning point. He leaned toward Maya. "I want to keep in touch, not just because of her but because of today. You didn't have to let me sit with you," Maya smiled. "And you didn't have to dance with her." They both looked at Alice, covered in sprinkles and joy. Later that night, Julian drove them both home. Alice had dozed off in the back seat, her head resting against Maya's arm. At her apartment, Maya helped Alice to the guest couch and covered her with a blanket. She whispered, "You're safe now." Julian lingered at the door, uncertain. "I'm not good at this," he said. Maya turned to face him. "Neither am I, but we're learning, right?" He nodded. "Maybe we could try again, not just tonight. Maybe you and I and Alice, if her father still doesn't come around, could keep something going." Maya considered it. "I think today was meant to happen, for all of us." They stood there for a moment, not needing anything more. Then Julian offered a hand. She took it. It wasn't the beginning of a love story, not yet. But it was the beginning of something rare. Two strangers finding meaning in each other through a little girl's tears. And for Alice, she didn't know it yet, but her life had just changed. The morning sun filtered through gauzy curtains as Maya stirred awake on the couch. Across the room, Alice lay bundled under a throw blanket, still fast asleep, her pink dress wrinkled and tiara slightly askew. Maya sat up slowly, her body sore from the long night but her heart strangely light. She padded into the kitchen to make coffee. The scent filled the apartment. Moments later, there was a soft knock at the door. Maya opened it to find Julian dressed casually now. Dark jeans, a white t-shirt, and a navy jacket. It was the first time she saw him without his professional armor. "I brought breakfast," he said, holding up a paper bag. "Hope she likes waffles," Maya smiled, stepping aside. "Come in." As they set the food out on the coffee table, Alice woke up, blinking. For a moment confusion crossed her face, but then she saw them, and her smile returned. "You're both still here," she said, voice small. "We're not going anywhere," Julian replied. In that quiet moment something solidified between the three of them. They were no longer just strangers brought together by chance. They were something closer, not a family, but maybe the start of one. They sat around Maya's small kitchen table eating waffles and strawberries. Alice swung her feet under the chair, chattering about the dance, her favorite songs, and how she wished every night could be like that. Maya glanced at Julian as Alice spoke. "We still haven't heard from her dad." Julian shook his head. "No return call, no reply to my email either. I'll try again." Then Alice asked out of nowhere, "Can I stay with you again tonight?" Julian and Maya exchanged a look. "I mean, just until my daddy comes back," Alice added quickly. Maya reached across the table and held the girl's hand. "Of course you can. You're safe here," Julian nodded. "But we should also check with someone, maybe Child Services or the community center director again, just to be sure we're doing this right." It wasn't lost on either of them how serious things were becoming. What had begun as a simple offer to sit, then a dance, now teetered into the territory of guardianship, responsibility, and emotional weight. Neither Julian nor Maya had planned for this, but neither backed away from it either. Sometimes, life rewrites the script before you even know you're in a story. The rest of the day passed quietly. Julian left briefly to check in with work and return calls, but promised he'd be back by dinner. Maya took Alice to the park, her hand tightly held by the little girl who had decided, without needing permission, that Maya was someone to trust. At the swings, Alice asked questions about Maya's childhood, about whether she had a princess dress too, about whether Julian was her boyfriend. Maya laughed. "No, honey, he's just someone kind who showed up when it mattered." "But you two smiled at each other a lot," Alice said seriously. Maya flushed and looked away. Later that evening, Julian returned, true to his word. He brought pizza, juice boxes, and a sense of quiet steadiness. Maya noticed it more now, the way he adjusted to being around them, the way he lowered his voice with Alice and never once checked his watch. After dinner, they all watched a movie. Alice curled up between them, drifting off halfway through. Julian reached across her and handed Maya a blanket. "Thank you," he said softly. "For what?" "For letting this happen," Maya smiled. "I should be thanking you." In that moment they both knew this was no longer about one night. The next morning brought something neither expected. A knock on Maya's door. Julian opened it to find a tired, disheveled man standing there, late 30s, eyes hollow and shoulders slumped. It was Alice's father. He stammered, I'm sorry, I got caught up, work, life, I didn't mean to scare her." Julian's instinct was to clench his jaw. Maya approached, standing beside him. Inside, Alice peeked out and saw the man. Her face fell. "Daddy?" she asked. He looked at her and nodded, tears brimming. "I'm sorry, sweetheart." Julian stepped back, allowing them space. Maya, too, took a deep breath. The man sat with Alice on the couch, apologizing, holding her. She hugged him, but hesitated. Her trust had clearly cracked. Afterward, the man looked at Maya and Julian. "I appreciate what you did, really. But I'm not ready for this. I thought I could raise her alone, but I keep failing," Julian asked gently. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying, maybe she needs something more. Something better." The room fell into silence. No one said anything for a long time, because sometimes the right thing doesn't feel like winning. Sometimes the right thing just feels heavy. The days that followed were filled with paperwork, social workers, and difficult conversations. Alice's father made the decision to temporarily relinquish custody while he sought help. It was clear he loved her, but also clear he wasn't ready. Julian, after discussing everything with Maya and the proper authorities, filed for temporary guardianship. Maya, though not legally bound, insisted on being present for every step. The three of them formed a makeshift rhythm. Breakfasts filled with laughter, story times on the couch, and occasional business calls Julian had to take between Lego towers and coloring books. One night, as they tucked Alice into bed, she looked up and whispered, "You guys are like a dream. But real." Maya kissed her forehead. "We're not going anywhere." Later, Julian and Maya stood on the balcony, staring at the city lights. For a long time, neither spoke. Then Julian said, "I was always afraid of becoming someone different, of breaking routine. And now?" Maya asked. "I think I was just waiting for a reason," Maya smiled softly. "And maybe you found one." He looked at her. "No, I think I found two." They didn't need to say more. Their lives had changed, and this was only the beginning. Weeks passed. What started as a temporary arrangement slowly became a beautifully chaotic life together. Julian adjusted his work schedule to spend more time at home. Maya began freelancing from her apartment, with Alice often sitting beside her, drawing pictures and telling stories about princesses who lived in penthouses and made waffles every morning. Their lives weren't perfect. Julian still had moments where the weight of responsibility hit hard. Maya still questioned whether she was ready for this kind of emotional investment. But the love they gave Alice, and the way she returned it tenfold, created something stronger than doubt. One evening, Alice surprised them both with a crayon drawing, the three of them holding hands under a rainbow with the words, "My family." Julian stared at the picture longer than he expected. "She sees us like this," he said quietly. Maya looked over his shoulder. "Maybe we should start seeing ourselves that way too." Julian turned to her. "Maya, this wasn't in my plan, none of it, but I can't imagine going back." Neither could she. Their connection had grown beyond words. What began in a cafe had turned into a home. That night, after Alice had fallen asleep beneath a blanket of fairy lights and stuffed animals, Maya and Julian sat on the living room floor. A bottle of wine rested between them, half finished. The lights were low. The city hummed quietly beyond the window. "You know," Julian began, "I've spent my life building walls. My whole career was about control, reputation, distance." Maya rested her head against the couch. "And now you're building pillow forts with a 6-year-old, he laughed. "And I've never felt more alive." She studied him. His features were softer now, less guarded, more human. "I'm glad you sat at my table that day." He looked at her sincerely. "You didn't just offer a seat, you changed everything." Their eyes locked. The silence between them was charged, not with fear but with understanding. Two people who had spent so long protecting themselves from hurt had stumbled into something unexpected, something real. Julian reached out and took her hand. There was no grand confession, no kiss, just presence, just truth. The night didn't promise a fairy tale ending, but it promised something better, a future. With temporary guardianship now official, Julian began restructuring his company role. He promoted a trusted deputy to COO and reduced his hours. Board members were shocked. Investors had questions, but Julian had answers. "I'm not stepping away," he told them. "I'm stepping forward, into something more meaningful." Maya supported him through it all, helping with legal logistics, managing Alice's new school enrollment, and offering calm when the pressure mounted. She had always been the quiet glue holding things together. Even when no one noticed, Alice flourished in her new environment. Her teacher said she was more confident, more engaged. At home, she danced in the living room, sang while brushing her teeth, and gave bedtime hugs like it was her job. Maya and Julian still hadn't labeled their relationship, but every glance, every shared smile, every small domestic routine made it clearer. They were in this together, and together they could face anything. 12 months passed since that fateful night in the cafe. The three of them celebrated the anniversary with ice cream, balloons, and a new dress for Alice, this time bicked out by both Julian and Maya. She twirled in the mirror, declaring, "I'm going to the daddy-daughter dance again." Julian knelt beside her, adjusting her shoes. "I wouldn't miss it for the world." Maya took a photo of them, tears pricking her eyes. How far they had come. Later that evening, as the dance played on and Alice skipped between songs with other girls, Julian and Maya sat at the edge of the room watching. "You ever think about what would have happened if I hadn't offered you that seat?" Maya asked. "All the time," Julian replied. "It was a simple act of kindness, and it changed 3 lives." They leaned in toward each other, foreheads touching. This time there was a kiss, not rushed, not dramatic, just real, like everything else that had grown between them. Sometimes the smallest decisions ripple through our lives with extraordinary force. A table shared in a cafe, a crying child in a pink dress, a CEO who listened to his heart instead of his calendar, a woman who saw someone hurting and chose to reach out. They didn't mean to become a family, but that's the thing about compassion, it doesn't follow rules. It opens doors we didn't know were locked. It leads us down paths we never planned to walk. And sometimes it brings together souls who were waiting for each other all along. Julian, Maya, and Alice weren't perfect. They had scars, fears, and pasts that occasionally threatened the peace they'd built. But together, they chose each other, day after day. And that choice made all the difference. So the next time you're sitting in a crowded place and someone needs a seat or someone needs to be seen, remember, the smallest act can start the greatest story. If this story moved you, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more cinematic tales of kindness, courage, and connection. Your support keeps stories like this alive.